Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Today, I want to talk about 4 watch brands that I think are one-trick ponies. 4 watch brands that, while they may be trying to do something apart from their singular trick, well, if their one thing didn't exist, then they probably wouldn't either. Now, of course, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Today, I'm wearing my friend's Citizen Eco Drive. He gave it to me, to fix. And it was difficult, but we got it fixed, and now I'm just kind of wearing it for the day to make sure that it functions as it should. I'll give it back to him over drinks on Friday. But yeah, Citizen Eco Drive. And also, guys, don't forget to check out DelReyWatch.com. A bunch of cool watches just came in stock, including the very rare Otsuka Loch number 6. If you guys don't know who Otsuka Loch is, he is a Japanese independent watchmaker that makes a very small batch of watches. They're sold out pretty much everywhere. This is the first one I've ever seen in the flesh, and I'm really pissed off to be selling it, but business is business. But the second one that comes in, I'm keeping for myself. The Otsuka Loch number 6. We also got in a watch from my early watch days, a watch I haven't seen in a minute, but I really do like, and that is the Panerai Radiomir Chronograph. This is a very interesting watch, the Radiomir being the dressier of the Panerais with its cushion case. I think the chronograph integrates pretty well into the shape. You don't see too many Panerai chronographs, let alone Radiomir chronographs, and I'm happy to have this one in. And then last but not least, definitely not least, because I'm only highlighting 3, so definitely not last, rather, is the Tissot Janeiro manual chronograph. Not just your normal Tissot. Probably one of the most collectible Tissots ever made. This has a manual wind Valjoux chronograph with the automatic works removed, and is a very beautiful vintage-inspired watch. I've only ever had one other one at Del Rey Watch in the past almost 10 years, so as I said, not very easy to get. The Tissot Janeiro chronograph is an absolute beauty. But anyway, guys, let's discuss these 4 brands that I think only exist for pretty much one reason, and we're going to go in no particular order. I'm going to start with Blancpain. And Blancpain, which is owned by the Swatch Group. Swatch Group should be very happy this is the only brand on this list, but that's only because there were 4. If this was like a top 10 list, Swatch Group would be making multiple entries. But Blancpain and their 50 Fathoms. If it wasn't for the 50 Fathoms, which, by the way, is a watch I actually quite like, but if it wasn't for their 50 Fathoms, they wouldn't exist. Now, not to say I don't like their VRA line, I think very handsome watches, but a mixture of price point, maybe stale design, pretty much means that 99% of Blancpain sales are most likely 50 Fathoms, and 50 Fathoms normal or their Bathyscaphe line, but very, very similar watches. No one gives 2 shits about a VRA, which is a little sad because they actually are good watches, but that means pre-owned, you guys can pick them up for a steal. But yeah, Blancpain and the VRA, Blancpain and the lack of interest in anything but the 50 Fathoms. Next is Richard Mille. Yeah, you guys saw this one coming. All their tonneau-shaped watches. Yes, they make a couple of different shapes. I actually like their round dive watch, and actually like their rectangular ultra-thin. But pretty much, the only people that buy Richard Mille anyway want to flex that they have a Richard Mille, so they only get the recognizable model, which of course is the tonneau shape. Now, I have a lot of issues with Richard Mille. I think they're massively overpriced. I think they're predominantly worn by morons and douchebags. If you wear one, I'm not saying you are a douchebag. You have questionable taste in watches. I'm not saying you are a douchebag, but I've yet to meet a Richard Mille owner that wasn't. So Once again, don't want to make a massively blanket statement, but blanket enough. You just overpriced millionaires' toys, where you definitely don't get good bang for buck, questionable history, and only one model anybody gives a shit about. I mean, that pretty much describes Richard Mille in my opinion. Now another sad one in my opinion, Vashron Constantin, the Overseas. Now, I love the Overseas, just like I like the 50 Fathoms. But if it wasn't for the Overseas, Vashron would pretty much be irrelevant. No one cares about their patrimony. They're so... Actually, the patrimony is not even a watch I like. I find them so aesthetically bleh. So boring. And they have made interesting watches in the past, like the Vashron 1921, that cushion-shaped driver's watch. Beautiful piece, but when it came out at like 37 grand, of course nobody bought it. That's a ridiculous price for what was a time-only precious metal piece. But yeah, as much as Vashron tries, they can only really rely on the Overseas. Yes, their newer entry-level line is starting to sell a little bit, but even a lot of Vashron owners and lovers kind of hate that line because it uses the only non-in-house movement from Vashron with no Geneva seal, the same movement found in Baume & Mercier. So while, there are a few sales of that line, let's be honest, without the Overseas, Vashron would be nothing in the current market. And then last but not least, a brand I adore as well, Girard-Perregaux, GP and the Laureato. Now, this one's a pretty extreme case. I actually own 2 Laureatos myself. I sell a lot of Laureatos, but without the Laureato, I don't think people would even know that GP exists. No one buys a Seahawk, which is shaped like a Laureato, so that's kind of questionable. No one buys a 1966. No one buys a 1945. Basically, their entire dress watch line is existent, but entirely irrelevant. Why is that? I'm not sure. This is one of them that I can't really explain. I do think they offer good value. The movements are good. But I think sports watches are what matter nowadays, and the only sports watch kind of in their current catalog is the Laureato. So I guess that makes sense. But the unfortunate truth is, without the Laureato, GP would be... would they even be around in 2025? That's the question. I'm not entirely sure. That being said, I'm a fan of the 1966. I think their Orion with the Aventurine dial, you guys know I love Aventurine dials. They made a dress watch with an Aventurine dial. That's an absolute beauty. By the way, that's also for sale at Del Rey Watch at a massive discount. Why? Because nobody wants a non-Laureato. But if you want an Aventurine dial dress watch, then they have an option. They do make very handsome non-Laureato watches. It's just no one seems to gravitate towards them. And guys, this list could go on and on and on and on. I mean, we could talk about... there's a lot of people. I mean, you could argue Rolex to a certain extent. Panerai, you could absolutely argue. I mean, that's for another video, but I think Blancpain, Richard Mille, Vashron Constantin, and GP are blatant examples of brands that rely entirely on one product line to do pretty much their entire business. Let me know what you guys think. Guys, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really does help. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more content. And of course, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.